Hi everybody, my name is Hector. I came from Mexico, from this company, Cal Interactive. You can find me in the web as Ekbuma. And before I start, I need to do my ad time. I need to do I want to share you something that I enjoyed a lot, and that is MagmaConf. It's the only conference like this one, but in Mexico. It's really cool. It's happening on the beach. We have 15 houses by the beach where you can hang out, go to the ocean, play football. We have our own Lucha Libre event down there with local wrestlers and some foreign wrestlers. We have a party on the boat. A lot of people has joined us before, like Constantine and Aaron Patterson and a bunch of guys. Call for Paper is open in November. I think PJ is coming, right? Just come join us, be a part of the Luchadores. It's next June, and thanks for the photos, Constantine, if here. And okay, that's enough. My talk. Cutting off the browser fat from your application. Well, first, so let's start with what is browser fat. Well, basically, it is something that slows down your application in the front end, in the browser side, like CSS, JavaScript, but images, and of course, HTML. And maybe you are thinking, I'm not a front-end guy. Why should I care? Well, basically because it takes time, and time equals money. So let me show you how it works. Maybe you don't know that. So 1 Mississippi. You have happy users. Everybody is doing a great time. Everybody it's buying stuff in your site, and everything's working well. 2 Mississippis. Well, the user starts to wait and get anxious. 3 Mississippis. User is mad now, and it's about to make his decision. And 4 Mississippis, well, this happens. The users just close the page and start to do something else. I'm pretty sure that everybody here has done this before. Like you are trying to see a GitHub repo and then it doesn't load, or you're trying to find something in Stack Overflow and suddenly it doesn't load, so you close the page and start doing something else. But you know what? There's something more important than the time. It is you. You are a web developer. You are not just backend developers. You do web stuff. Sometimes, if you're in a small team, you're going to be working in the front end, or sometimes the application is slow and your client is asking why. So you need to give him solutions. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips to how to improve your browser, to remove your browser fat. So let's start with CSS. Please raise your hand if you know what this means. One, okay. So for those who doesn't know, you normally wrote CSS selectors like these things, thinking that you want to find an ID first, then all the list items, and then the anchor on that list items. But for the browser, it's totally different. He will first look for the anchors, then for all the list items in the DOM, and then we'll try to find those list items that are on an ID. Let me put it in a graphic way. So this is the DOM tree, kind of. The browser will look for all the anchors, then for all the list items, and then for the identifier. So it takes time, and it's you can reduce the time just writing better selectors. For example, you have the qualifier selectors. It doesn't make any sense to write these kind of selectors because the ID is already specific enough, and adding a tag, just making redundant. So just remove the tag, make it simple. Descendant selectors, this is also the same, this is basically the example. If you do this, your browser will try to find every element on the right side to apply the color. Why just not create a couple of classes and apply it wherever you want to? This thing in qualifier selectors probably is the worst thing that you can do, because the browser will try to find first all the data attributes, and then we'll try to find all the anchors. So basically, we'll look for in all the DOM. So it takes a lot of time. About chaining, we love to have this to grab just one class and add it to another selector, and so on. Instead of that, just create a big class. That's much better. Also, remember that the C on CSS, it's cascade. So instead of apply a set of rules to a specific element, doing an upper one. That will be so much better. Okay, so SAS, it's one of the best things that we have right now, and it's included in Rails since versions 3.1. And it's super cool, but a lot of developers said that SAS does bad code, but you know what? It is not SAS, it is bad developers. Bad developers do bad things. So for example, you sometimes nest to deep. That's super cool feature that you can grab a selector and put it inside another one, but sometimes you start to nesting a lot, and you end with this huge CSS file that you don't know where it starts or where it ends. So one way to avoid that is the inception rule. Basically, don't do more than 4 steps for steps of indentation. If you're doing 5 or 6, just remove those and put it in another selector. Another cool thing, mixins, but sometimes if you misuse it, you will end with a lot of clone code. Basically, the correct way to use mixins, it's making dependent of the parameters. If your mixin is using a parameter to change the rules that you are setting there, that's cool and that's perfect. But if just a set of rules that you want to apply here and another place, you are not. It is not adding a value to your files, and also it's making bigger files, and it's going to be harder to maintain. Same thing happening with extend. You can super cool extend some rules of one class to another class, and we love it. But again, if you misuse it, you will end with this bunch of code on this compiled code that will be totally unreadable with this huge CSS selector that actually don't make any sense. So please don't do it. Try to make and think before adding an extend or mixing. Please learn CSS. It's super easy to do. It's super easy to read the documentation. Learn common things as floats. Everybody use it. I know that if you are building your an MVP or any kind of project, you start your layouting your application, putting float left and float right, all the elements, and doing all those kind of stuff. And at the end, you grab something, and suddenly deep grows more than you think, and the page is all broken. Just go and browse. There's a bunch of places to have good information about it. Don't forget that you have this stuff like this, SMAX. It helps you to organize your CSS. If you haven't read it, it's a book. It has an online version. Go ahead and read it. It's really, really simple. And also, you can do things in the right way. Remember that you have object-oriented CSS, where you can separate the structure of the skin and write better and more maintainable CSS. Your team will love you. And let's continue with JavaScript. There's a lot of things that I can say about JavaScript. There's, it's an entire different world. So I'm just trying to tell you just 2 or 3 things that I think that are the most common things to do. Let's begin with move it down. If you ask someone about what can I do with the performance of my JavaScript, they will say you move it down. So writing this talk, I think to do my first why not pull request to the Rails project. So basically, I moved down the JavaScript tag to the bottom. Why not? Why not having it in the first layout that Rails gave it to you in each project? Well, that is completely makes sense for me, but the Rails team said no. They say that it's a dumb pull request, and also that newbie users will get confused about it. And also they say that this is going to break inline JavaScript, which it's already bad, so that doesn't make any sense for me. But okay. You can use a string on the first and the fur on your include tags. So basically, delay your script execution until the HTML is ready. And async, it's start parsing all the HTML, and once it's finished to load the JavaScript, it executes them. The bad thing about defer is that it's not well supported for as much as browsers as we want to, but we can use async. Use ID over classes. That will be more faster than classes in your JavaScript selectors. I found this thing that is JSPerf to do these benchmarkings. It's super cool. You can find the real test on that link. You can also use context in your jQuery selector, and that will be more faster. Use catch objects. Then you will need to write more code, but at the end, your browser will love it because it is faster to have a catch it variable and then iterate through that variable. That every time that you are on a loop, try to find that selector. So it's better to write a catch object. And I know everybody loves each. It's kind of groovy, but it is slow as hell. So you have the for loop and the while loop, which are built in JavaScript. So this is use while or for. That will be better for your JavaScript. Okay, so IMG. Let's begin with, it's all about fewer HTTP requests. Your browser only have between 6 and 8 parallel connection. So you have to minimize the amount of requests that you're doing to the different web servers. One of way to avoid as much as requests as you want, it is using sprites. Basically, you grab a bunch of images, put it on a big PNG, and move it with CSS. And of course, optimize all the things. Basically, when the designers send you an image, don't just put it in your web. Grab a couple of some tool and try to optimize that image. You can reduce the size of the images without distortion, without losing some quality of the image by 50% or something like that. And remember that images has different file types, and you have to use it for some specific reasons. For example, JPEG, you can use it for images with a lot of colors, PNGs with transparent stuff, GIFs, well, we know GIFs, and But no, actually use it for logos and things with low resolutions and with a low amount of colors. And please do not resize your images. It's like the worst thing that you can do. You can usually you grab this huge image. We can see there is like 1,000 and I don't know what by 1017. It's like huge image, and the guys of this page are resizing the image by actually by CSS or something. So this thing will first do two things. You will load a big image on where you can load a small image, and second, it will if you not set the height of the width of the page of the image, sorry, the image will be repainted. Basically, once the image is loaded, it will be the whole HTML is going to be repainted because you didn't set the height and neither the weight of that image. So basically, avoid bad images. And another thing, well, talking in other topic is serve GZIP content, but it is not quite easy. You know, if you are using, for example, Heroku, and if you go to your website and see the CSS that the Heroku is serving to you, you will see that it's not GZIP. You have it in your asset precompile and your asset folder, but Heroku doesn't know how to serve it. So you need to use something like this gem that basically add rack middleware that deflates or compress your if it is not compressed, it will compress it and it will be served. So that will make you super happy. If you are using it Nginx or Apache, you have to configure your web server to serve those kind of files. And talking about HTML, you know, just delete it. The first time that you wrote your layouts, I'm pretty sure that you grab a lot of divs, a lot of elements that you actually don't need. So just go back, delete everything, and write again. You can use a couple of tools to help you to increment the speed of your site, like Kraken.io. It's a super cool tool that lets you optimize your images. I upload a couple of images, and it reduced the size by 49%. That is super cool. And also, it has Ruby API, so you can every time you can integrate with ImageMagick or with Carrier Wave, and every time you upload an image to your site, you can send it to Kraken.io, and it will send it back optimized. Use Chrome developer tools. It's integrated with Chrome, with also in Safari. I think you have it. It's super cool. It gives you a lot of graphics, a lot of the things that you can use to improvise, increment the speed of your web pages. Use PageSpeed, Google's PageSpeed. That is, it gives you a set of highlights where you can improve the performance of your application. And I apply some of these tips to this site, retrospectives.com. It's an application that we built in Crowd Interactive. It's for doing retrospective meetings. So the dashboard, it was kind of slow. This is on a 1 megabit connection. So after doing a lot of changes on the CSS, on the images, and on the serving GZIP assets, I downed the time to 6 seconds, so it's super cool. And in the home page, I moved from almost Mississippi and a half to less than 1 Mississippi, so that's super cool. So that's all that I have to say. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Hector?
In the Rails, you have the assets pipeline, and sometimes CSS and JavaScript that I use for my homepage, I don't use anywhere else in the site. So, what are your opinions about separating like certain CSS and JavaScript not into the SS pipeline and just sticking it to the header of the list, or just the FAQs?
Yeah. Well, the best thing to do is grab and create another manifesto. You can create as many manifestos as you want, and just create one for your homepage and grab the CSS that you want to apply there, and just load those just CSS there. Or JavaScript. That's the best option.
Supposing that you have done your job well and you have a small amount of requests. I mean, you are using CSS sprites, all your JavaScript is one file, but your page is starting to render late because your JavaScript is a big file. Would you gain any benefit by splitting into 2 files that will be downloaded in parallel?
It depends first in how big the files are. I mean, in
Let's say 300K after GZ.
It's not too much. I mean, the best option will be separate those files and serve asynchronous. If you can't, sometimes you cannot load it asynchronous because your page need it. But I think that the best option will be try to use just the JavaScript that you need for one. For example, in the homepage or in the dashboard of your application, you only need a couple of functions. You can separate the JavaScript to use, for example, required JS, and just require the functions that you need, the files that you need in that moment, and that will be better for your site. I mean, that's the best option. And also, those tips plus the guy, what's the name of the other guy, the catch guy? Vitali. The Vitali tips plus moving everything to a CDN and using Fastly on those or CloudFront, and I don't know which services do you know that will super fast your application. Anything else?
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Hector.